Our next speaker, her name is Vera, and Vera likes colour, she likes pastries, and she likes animating, and she believes in the harmony of blending digital and hand-drawn images. Since graduating from Edinburgh College of Art, Vera has been shortlisted for several awards, including a BAFTA New Talent nomination. Please welcome Vera Babida.
Hi. I'm shitting bricks right now, so my face is probably going to look a little bit like this. But if things go south, that's what my face is probably going to look like. So thank you, Node, for having me. Thank you, James and Kim, for organizing this amazing event and having me as one of your speakers. So I'm Vera. I'm an animator and an illustrator at Love and Money Agency. Just to give you a quick background of myself before everyone starts to wonder where my accent came from. I was born and raised in Hong Kong. I left when I was 16 and spent 6 years in the UK, hence the mix of accents. So now we got that out of the way, I'm here to talk about my journey on how I've evolved as a creative individual and how color influences my work. And here we go. Slow this down a little bit. So a year and a half ago, I've spent about 8 months making my thesis film called There Again. It's a semi-autobiography of a girl being stuck in an endless cycle of loneliness, some say alcoholism, and the world of online dating. And so I was sketching a lot during that summer, mainly to help myself figure out what I wanted to do for my thesis films. My ideas are very sporadic, so bear with me. I knew that I wanted to do something related to online dating as it felt quite relevant at the time. I was a girl looking for love. Tinder was at its height, probably still is. My flatmates at the time met their partners through the internet, and there were lots of very interesting articles floating around the internet, articles about online dating and the effects that it has on people. I was also working part-time in this beautiful restaurant, so I was picking up on certain conversations and I would record them after my shifts. Because I was working in hospitality industry, it became a huge source of inspiration for the film. The first thing was the setting of it. So I was beginning to gather a library of background images I can use as reference for the film, mainly from restaurants I've worked in, but also restaurants I've dined in. I was also taking photographs of how shadows interact in space, which was this little fascination of mine. A second thing was booze. I was exposed to some amazing beers and wines whilst working in the restaurant, while it became a huge influence on my work, especially these young labels are always really exciting and have some really amazing color palettes. And then, of course, food. Food is my biggest inspiration. A friend of mine who's a chef, and I often have chats about our work, sharing our griefs and joys and whatnot. And we thought hospitality, in a way, is actually pretty similar to the illustration and design and animation world. And as a chef, when you consider a dish, you need to think of a balance of flavor, textures, how the elements look together on a plate, whether the garnishes, even though it adds a pop of color, but does it enhance the dish? I know this sounds very chef's table, but it's like painting with food. And in our case, it's kind of the same thing. We want a balance of substance and storyline as well as making them look good. So I eventually got to the stage where I've written a script, which has gone through numerous of modifications with my tutor and feedback from my course mates. And then eventually I have broken it down to a list of scenes that I needed to sketch out. And then I've moved on to storyboarding. So as you could see, I started off with pencil and Sharpie. It's mainly to give myself an idea of the highlights and shadows. So I was filling my blank spaces with black fills to balance out the frames. And after that, I've started to play around with my color palettes. I've used my main character as a starting point, as she would appear throughout the whole film, so I thought if I nailed her, the backgrounds would come easy for me. So I was heavily inspired by screen printing at the time as well. I remember when I was first introduced to it, I was told that, correct me if I'm wrong, but you wanted to use the most minimal selection of colors for the maximum outcome. So I was trying to keep my palette quite restrictive. Five is restrictive, I guess. And eventually I settled on this. So I began putting her in situs with objects or in backgrounds to see if they would work together and to see if I needed to introduce more colors, or could I use 5 colors I've initially decided on and apply to everything. So I've picked some key scenes that I think are the most important and also the ones that are on screen the longest. My initial thought for the backgrounds was whether I can create an environment that was a contrast to her skin color to convey that she feels out of place and that everything seemed repetitive and monotone. But not being black and white, I personally am not a fan of using monochrome backgrounds with a colorful character to set the mood. But I guess it's a personal preference. I just feel that's rarely done well. So I was using off black or navy blue instead of jet black. So I don't know about you, but I thought this didn't really work for me. So this is where my sporadic thoughts come in. I jumped back and forth and I went back to square one and tried out different colors because they didn't really work. So I needed to get something out of my system to just make sure that this is the right choice for my character. And I thought to myself, should have gone black and white, hey, from the very beginning. Would have made life so simple. So you could see in the bottom left, like stacking your layers of different colors upon each other and creating new colors. And using the same theory as screen printing and risograph, I was also using multiply and color burns to experiment a little with the colors. And after a few tweaks, I went back to the first color palette I've settled on and just sort of made it a little bit lighter. And I got to this, which was cool, not bad, so let's take this a little further. And with the screen printing mixing theory I had in mind, I was mixing the colors of her hair, her eyes, skin, and navy blue to come up with the rest of the secondary colors. So I came up with a system for the rest of my keyframes. And so I've colored my whole storyboard and put them next to each other, which is pretty satisfying. Just to check if the color flows and corresponds to the background. So I've then animated all of my frames on the now animated CC, but Flash, as I found their timeline pretty useful, and I couldn't afford TV Paint at the time. And here's a screenshot of one of the scenes. You could see I am a spaz. And you see how I name my files? Yep, sorry. Sorry, I'm better now. Anyway, so I had the messiest system ever when I was doing my final year grad film. So then I've exported all of these frames individually to Photoshop for coloring. So I've also combined a little bit of After Effects as well as this wave warp, which I've comped into the wine glasses. And then we got to the animatic stage, where during all of that, I was in touch with my composer, Athos Tilpani, and I've sent him my animatic for him to score. And if you look at certain bits, you could see some have been animated, some are just stills, some are just going to be boils. So, lines, colors, sound, movement, all the things came together. So I'm here to show you my graduation piece. There again. Enjoy. So now you've seen it, and thankfully lots of other people did too, from all over the world, and including Australia, which my partner and I decided that this is where we wanted to go next, as we grew pretty sick of the weather of Scotland. You think Melbourne's really bad, but Scotland's the epitome of shit weather. So anyways, one of the people who saw that was an agency called Love and Money. And that was when my next journey began. And just a quick background about Love and Money, which is a digital agency who works with small startups to big businesses on branding and strategizing their digital platform. So I work with graphic designers, strategists, developers, businesswomen, businessmen. So I knew I was going to learn more design than animation. So I wanted to learn everything, as much as I really wanted to do Cinema 4D, as I'm a 2D cell animator, and explore new techniques and make more films. I wanted to brush up on my design skills and also to learn how to work with a team, which was so perfect for me as a fresh grad. And the team in Love and Money is so young and vibrant, and we all work together, but we can all focus on our strengths and help each other out. And from being in your own, working on your own film all by yourself to being with a team is such an eye-opener for me. And also being in, as Mike says, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. But being the only animator there, it gave me an advantage to think in a bigger picture and specialize in one thing. So one of the highlights that we've done last year was to help Polaroid Originals to rebrand their website. I was doing some little test animations for them for the conceptual stage, which was not used in the very end, but these little illustrations of tip sheets made to the website, which is great. Had a lot of fun doing them. We were digging for the beautiful archives that Polaroid had, and I get to play with like the most traditional way of like doing your drawing, hand drawn, scan it in, all that. And then we have this project called Boopies, which is a project I've been heavily involved with since day one. So these are the early character developments that I've done. So we were given a brief by a fairly established company who wanted to make a brand new spin-off collection that is different from what they normally would do, whether it's a character, fabric, packaging, their purpose. And if you haven't guessed yet, it's plushie toy related. And the great thing about working with the team, you heard all my struggles of trying to come up with the storyline over 3 months, whilst our strategy director just spits ideas like breathing air. And we came up with a backstory to all of these characters and their personas in a course of maybe a month or even less. And all I had to do was to focus on drawing and coming up with a style, color palette for these characters. So these characters evolved over time. And here you have 6 main characters. So long story short, without revealing too much since it hasn't been launched yet, we're now trying off with one of our characters called Zip, which is in the top right-hand corner there, which is a guy. So we're going to make him exist online for children to read, a little interactive children's book. And these are some of the examples of like inspirations I've pulled together to create their world. As you could see that there's like Steven Universe, Oliver Jeffers, the new Samurai Jack backgrounds. How bloody beautiful are those backgrounds? And Mobius, or pictures of the Grand Canyon, or Cooper PD, Opal Mines, etc. And here's a little snippet of some of the scenes. So the real challenge was how to do what we take something that is meant to be a cuddly soft toy into the digital world. And we really wanted to focus on a warm color spectrum that gives people, especially kids, that warm, fuzzy feeling, because color theory, and something that's approachable and soft. There's another little snippet. And then you go from that to another project called Hey, which is an app that connects brands and their influencers together. This is a selection of icons that I've drawn for hover states that exist both on mobile and desktop web, where you go from monochrome to color when you hover over them. Some other stuff I've done. Some little boob action for you. So for the breast cancer research in the UK, we were given a word to produce a film under a second that visualizes a cheeky euphemism for breasts. So I'm sure you know I got the word melons. So I know this is not entirely animation related, but it's a good example to demonstrate my creative process. So a friend from Copenhagen was doing a food and wine pop-up with his friends, which they've named themselves the Lost Boys. And they wanted to name their event Falafel and Rosé. So when I start on a piece of work, I sometimes start on a tablet, sometimes on a pen and pencil. It really varies. I'm a spaz. And I'll get everything out of my system, whatever came to mind. It's like something literal to the name or something very random. I'll sketch them all out. And they can be like if you look in the left-hand corner, I took inspiration on the actual Lost Boys movie poster. And then you have on the right, which is a random macaque holding a pink bottle. So So I was trying to suss out what the vibe is going to be, and this is the final outcome. So I like to tailor something to someone, and I especially love doing portraits of people and making it more personal to them. So I like understanding my clients. If they have a Dashin, I'll draw a Dashin on their head or something. But I guess it really depends whether you like them or not, right? But in this case, I really like them. So whether it's a subtle nod to them and their personalities like that, I really like putting that in my work. And I think even when you're creating something still, you still want to sort of convey movement in a still image, which is what I try to achieve in my 2D work. It keeps your eyes from moving around, and yeah. So that was my journey up until then. Thanks, Hen. I hope that there's something in this speech that you found interesting, and I also hope I'm not as pink as this right now. And I look forward to having a chat with everybody.